So look at this fun woman, Queen Victoria. Don't you know she was fun to be around? I'm not so sure. She was the queen for almost 70 years. And during this time, this age is known as the Victorian Age. And I have a link here if you want to look up more about the Victorian Age. And really, you could just Google Victorian Age and you'll get a lot of good stuff on what was going on in that period of time. But we're going to go to the next slide. Well, looking at that picture of Queen Victoria, you probably already get some ideas of what this time period was like. So I'm going to do the reading here. The common perception of the period is the Victorians are prudish, hypocritical, stuffy, and narrow-minded. This perception is, as most periodic generalizations are, not universally accurate. However, it is also true that this description applies to some large segments of Victorian English society, particularly amongst the middle class, which at the time was increasing both in number and power. Many members of this middle class aspired to join the ranks of nobles and felt that acting properly according to the conventions and values of the time was an important step in that direction. So we've had some readings that talk about class. Mrs. Mallard and the Story of an Hour. Why couldn't she just say, "You're a nice guy, Brentley Mallard, but I want to move on"? Well, because she had to marry according to her class, as she had no status of her own. A movie that might give you some idea of this time period is Pride and Prejudice. Now, the book actually was a precursor to the Victorian era, but it gives you a pretty good idea of that time in England. So we're going to look at a clip. So here's a clip of Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet at the ball. Now, it looks like everybody is having everything but a ball at this ball, but it will tell you what English society was like at the time and what they were considered class, and sort of what the rules were. And Mr. Darcy is the ideal man. He has both money and class, and he's not bad to look at either. So he's going with Elizabeth Bennet, or he's asking her to dance. The two of them have a lot of talk. This movie is full of banter, babble, talk, and a little bit of dancing too. So what was America doing during the Victorian Age? Well, we were trying to act just like England. And so this picture comes from Gone with the Wind. And so Gone with the Wind is talking about that time before, during, and after the Civil War in the 1800s. And during this time, the upper class, which of course is the white southern plantation owners, business owners, they are trying to do the same things. They're trying to wear the same clothes. They're trying to have the same rules as England. However, we were in a bit of a different circumstance at the time because the system was falling apart. Much like in Europe, it was falling apart here because we have just gone through the Civil War. And the Civil War is all about breaking down those class barriers that the plantation owners, the aristocracy, are trying to build up. So in Gone with the Wind, you see the white aristocracy behaving like the Europeans. But then the Civil War comes, the South loses the Civil War, and now you have Reconstruction. During this time, there is a great migration of African Americans, those who had been slaves before. Many of them moved to particularly New York and Washington, D.C., Chicago areas. They moved away from the plantations. Well, now how is the South, which is entirely agricultural based, how are they going to not only survive, but how is the aristocracy going to prosper? So they decide on this great idea of sharecropping. So now you've got white and black sharecroppers who are virtually free slaves to do the work that the slaves had done before. And this system isn't going to go over very well either, because there is nothing in it for sharecroppers to do the work of the plantation owners, because there is no ability for them to rise in prosperity at all, because they can't own land. Because who has all the land? The aristocracy, and they pass it down through to their own children. So this is a really tough time. It is going to be the end of the agrarian age, the golden age that some considered it, and lead into the Industrial Revolution. So, two Americas. There's the aristocracy, and then you have the slaves. This is, of course, pre-Civil War. And in the movie, you'll see a good example of Mammy here taking care of Scarlett basically all of her life. White women during this time, upper-class white women during this time, did not nurse their own babies. They had black women who had just had babies would be wet nurses, and these wet nurses would nurse the little white children and basically raise them their entire lives. And so you've got Mammy in Gone with the Wind taking care of Scarlett, who needs naps, and she needs help with her dressing and all of that because she's too upper class to take care of herself. Now, it's interesting to note here that even though this is talking about Civil War times, Hattie McDaniel, who won the Oscar in 1940 for her supporting role in this movie, when Hattie McDaniel went to the Oscars, she was not allowed to sit at the table with any white people. She and her escort were given a table all by themselves, the only two black people, in the segregated Oscars at the time. And she also has 2 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, but she wasn't able to stay in the same hotel when she went for these awards. She had to go to black hotels. So even though the movie is talking about the 1800s, this was 1940, the time of May and Johnson in Like a Winding Sheet. So racism was still extremely alive and well during that time. And wow, I still haven't even gotten to Hemingway yet. So what does any of this have to do with Hemingway? Well, the movie Gone with the Wind sort of shows here the shift between the ideal man of the Victorian age and what was going to be the ideal man of the modern age. And so you've got Ashley Wilkes, who is Scarlett's love at the beginning of the movie, and then she meets Rhett Butler. And there's a clip here for you to watch of the meeting between them where she sees Ashley and Rhett. And really what you're getting is the idea of the shift between the ideal man of the Victorian age and the ideal man of the modern age. And the question is, for Hemingway, what do women want and who do men want to be? But Rhett, where will I go? What will I do? Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.